So good morning, everybody. My name is Alex Fraser. I'm the director of the Council for Responsible Social Media. For those of you I have not met yet, and really appreciate everyone being here on this rainy day. You know what they say, that on your wedding day, if it rains, you're sort of blessing and having good luck for the wedding and for the marriage. And I think that is the same for this council. And so really excited that everyone to be here today. And just to start us off, I am honored to introduce our co-chair and leader, the sort of force behind a lot of this work and really the inspiration, and that's Congressman Dick Gephardt.
Thank you, thank you. No applause, please. When I was a young kid, my mother said to me, "Dick, be humble. You deserve to be." Never forgotten it and never will. So thank you all for being here. And in a minute, I'll introduce our co-chair, Carrie Healy, who's right here. And we're so happy to have her leading this effort with us. And I thank all of you for being here. I'm frankly humbled by your presence. There's so much knowledge, so much experience, so many great people in this room who know much more about this than I do, who have been working on solutions to this problem for years already. So that's the magnificence of this group. And I really, really appreciate your time and what we're going to ask you for your effort in the days ahead. I was asked by some of the reporters I talked to, Corey put me on to some reporters about this event, and their main question was, why are you doing this? What is this about? Why is this a problem? And I said, well, I'm sure everybody on our council will have a different story for why they're concerned about this, interested in it, but let me today give you my story. So as you may know, I was in the Congress for 28 years. I was leader of the Democrats for half that time. And I had a ringside seat to see how this incredible democracy we have works from the inside. How does it really operate? How does this work? I used to put 60 members in a room every night at 5 o'clock, 60 Democrats, to talk about the issues that we had to figure out. And let me just take immigration as an example. So we'd start to talk about immigration. And I had people from far left to far right, everything in between, all kinds of views, all kinds of disagreements on that issue and every issue. And so we had people who came from border states who thought we ought to shut off immigration entirely because of all the problems that were created in their states. We had people from the interior of the country, like where I came from, Missouri, who wanted to cut down on the number of immigrants because they were taking our people's jobs. And then we had other people who said the secret sauce of the country is immigrants, and they only help our economy. So we need to let more of them in. So that's how the discussion started. I used to say to members, none of us knows everything. I don't, you don't, nobody does. We're just finite human beings. We have to listen to one another. We have to learn from one another. And after we had had 20 meetings on immigration, people would come up to me and say, you know, when we started this, I just knew what our policy should be. And I listened to him and her and him and her, and I changed my mind. That's human interaction. How did we dominate the earth? Bigger brain, language, communication. If we just use those two assets, we can come to agreement, compromise, consensus on how to solve controversial problems. And many times I saw big, tough, controversial issues decided in Congress. And I was always in awe and still am today, that we could have a vote on those issues finally after all that work. There, on every issue like that, there were winners and losers. And by winners and losers, I don't just mean the members of Congress. I mean the people out in the country. They're the important people who were deeply angry at the solution, but they were willing to grudgingly accept the result because they thought the process was fair. They were heard. They made their arguments. They lost that vote. There may be another vote, 2 years from now. But they were willing to accept and live with the result. That is the magic of democracy. And it is magic. If we only had one person making those decisions, we would be in a constant state of revolution, as many other countries are today. So, with that experience, in the last 10 years, I've been out a long time, I began to worry about what's changed in our politics. Why can't Congress function well anymore? Why can't they find these agreements? Why is it dysfunctional? And then I began to see that the people are more polarized and divided than any time in my lifetime. In fact, I conclude today the American people are about as divided, maybe as divided as they were in 1860. That's a big statement. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not sure I am. Families have trouble now having Thanksgiving dinner together because people are so angry at one another because of their differences in belief, their differences about what the facts are, beyond belief. To the point that I think what's happening now, and you saw it on January the 6th, and you see it every day, people are driven to the point of contemplating or practicing violence against the people that they hate and they think are ruining the country. I think half the people on January 6th were just normal, fine citizens who were brainwashed by the information culture that we've arrived at to believe that the election was stolen. And they came here to try to preserve the country. So we've got a problem. Houston, we have a problem. And then I began to notice that not only was it affecting our democracy and our ability to have government of, by, and for the people, which it always is and has to be, but then I started to notice problems children were having, young people. I talked to university presidents and they'd tell me from all over the country, they'd say, do you realize that 2/3 of our students now have mental problems? Our health service can't even begin to deal with it. Now, I realize social media and the effects of social media are not the only reason for that. We had a pandemic, a lot of other things going on. But they all say to me, social media is a significant part of this problem. And then I began to notice that, our foreign adversaries, Russia, China, Iran, whoever, were happy to pile into this situation to begin to get their disinformation, their propaganda. And they were using Americans to do their work, to divide us. Why? They want to defeat us. It's pretty simple. If you can do this, You don't even need to have A-bombs. You don't need to have nuclear weapons. You don't need anything. You just need internet research or whatever they call it in Russia to get the job done. So you all know all of this better than I know it. So I'm preaching to the choir. But we had a call the other day with Maria Ressa. I think, Nick, you were on it, some of the others. She is an incredible person. I learned about her, I think, through Tristan or Francis and the people that are here that have been so magnanimous and effective on this stuff. She won the Nobel Peace Prize, and she is in the Philippines, and she has an organization there that's fighting to preserve their democracy and to have social information reform. And she said something that really chilled me at the end of the call. She said, you all need to understand that this problem is urgent. You don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time to deal with this. If America's democracy goes under, she said, you just have to know that all the other democracies in the world are countries that are trying to be democracies. They're in the process of trying to be democracies, will fall immediately. Time is up. Gotta go. We've got to get something done. So the question then is, what do we do? And that's why we're here. And that's why I'm so honored that you would come and help with this. And let me just state a few things before I introduce Carrie. The first thing we have to do is understand the problem. Einstein once said if he's asked to solve a big problem in an hour, he'll spend 55 minutes trying to understand the problem and 5 minutes on solutions. Our big problem, my big problem, I did not understand this. I did not. I'm not a smart guy. I'm not a technology person. I don't do this. But I reached out to Tristan, Francis, Jonathan Haidt, who I don't think could be here today. You need to read his stuff. Roger McNamee, who's a Silicon Valley guy who's been in the middle of this for a long time. And I finally understood, I think, how the platforms have operated. And to put it in its simplest terms, I learned that they use industrial scale data extraction on all the users to manipulate what information they get that is designed to make them angry and anxious, so they keep their attention, so their advertisers have to pay more money for their ads. You have to think Nielsen ratings, right? So a great rating for one of our channels, on our cable channels today would be what, 10 million people? Imagine the ratings that these platforms can show. Just think about it for a minute. Billions of posts a day in real time coming over their platforms. So this is not complicated if you really understand it and think about it. So that is kind of where we have to enter the problem. The other thing I think we have to keep in mind is that this information technology has many good things about it. I mean, just sit here today and think about what it was like before iPhones, before the platforms. Just remember how it has brought families together, how it brought people together during the pandemic when they couldn't leave their houses, to see one another, to talk to one another, to interact together. Think of the productivity increase. I still don't think economists have measured the productivity increase that's come from all of this information technology. It's unbelievable. I just think myself, I do 10 Zoom calls a day. I couldn't do one. I'd have to travel somewhere to see somebody. It's incredible. And then if you want to talk about democracy, let's remember Arab Spring would not have happened without social media. Let's remember that what's happening in Iran today would not be happening without social media. So it's not all bad. There's a lot of good. But having said that, there are catastrophic impacts on people, on community, for our security, and our democracy. And that has to be understood and dealt with as quickly and effectively as we possibly can. Two last things I'd say. We want this to be an action tank. We don't need another think tank. There are a lot of people looking at this stuff, and I applaud and appreciate their views. We're going to try to learn from all of them. But this has to be an action tank that comes up with even small things that we can get behind and push over the finish line. The other analogy that Francis uses a lot that I think is really important is we've got to look at our history of our country and what we've done with regulation, and I mean sensible regulation to solve problems. I was on the Ford board for 10 years. And I love Bill Ford, and I love that company because I think it's one of the best companies we've ever had in America. But they always talked in the meetings about safety regulation and environmental regulation that sometimes they had troubles with because the regulators went too far in their view. But they clearly understood that those regulations were important and necessary and allowed them to have better products and to help the people they were selling their products to. And Bill Ford, we were always angry at California because they were always going too far on some of it. And Bill Ford would say, don't get angry at them. Go out there and talk to them. And so we at Ford had a constant interaction with the regulators in states and at the federal level to make it work for everybody. And it does. But it's an ongoing, never-ending process to get the balance you need to make the regulations really work. We've done the same thing with food. We've done the same thing with buildings. My friend Sean, who's the head of the building trades, knows this well. I mean, we have regulations on safety and all kinds of things with buildings. We have regulations on drugs, on finance. This is nothing new. So I'd end this by saying we're going to talk a lot today about solutions later. And we got to really think about all that and be careful about all that. But if we can come together ultimately behind some sensible solutions that we can all pretty much agree with and get our shoulder behind it and be entirely bipartisan, nonpartisan, and respect the need for freedom of speech, we can be a help in bringing about a better situation for everybody. So with that, I want to introduce Carrie Healy. She was the Republican Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts and had a great career there. And as importantly, she's now the president of the Milken Institute for Advancement of the American Dream. And she is perfect for being part of this effort, and we deeply appreciate. She went to Nantucket with Tristan and some of his team, and maybe others in the room a couple of weeks ago, and represented this council and did a magnificent job. And so I'm really thrilled to have her help us and be part of this in such a big way. So, Carrie.
Thank you, Dick. I just wanted to very quickly add a few comments, add to Dick's excellent description of the challenge ahead of us. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone who traveled so far to join us today and to say what an honor it is to work with Dick and to work with all of you on this incredibly important issue. When I got the call from Issue 1 and was asked to be a part of this project, I felt like Dick was just saying, maybe I don't understand enough about it to actually contribute. But I did know that I had seen the impact, the negative impacts of social media again and again throughout my career. Over the course of the last 10 years, it had just accelerated. When I was president of Babson College, again, as Dick had mentioned, I saw within the university system that the mental health of young people was deteriorating, and we couldn't figure out why. We couldn't actually see what was happening, but I knew that every year I had to hire more and more mental health experts. I had to build a clinic. I had more suicides. I had more crisis. I had a majority of my students on anti-anxiety medication. And our students were, I think, actually extraordinarily healthy and productive, but still there was this level of anxiety that was underlying everything that they were doing, and it was only increasing. And I think only recently I've understood where some of this tension was coming from, where the underlying problems were arriving. And throughout my career, I've been interested in foreign policy. That's what I did my academic work in. That's what I did my work in national politics. And I couldn't help but see that suddenly things weren't going in a rational way, that there was disinformation out there that was driving both the American people to oppose one another in a way that was much more vicious and zero-sum than it had been in the past, but also that other nations were able to tamper in our democracy in ways that I had never been able to see earlier when I was in politics. And so I have been extremely concerned about the negative impacts of social media on our culture. And in my current position as the president of the Center for Advancing the American Dream at the Milken Institute, I've had a chance to even look at it from a different perspective, which is to say, what's keeping people from feeling that they are empowered to achieve their dreams in America today? And part of it is the divisiveness that has been sown in society. Part of it is this notion that our world is on the brink, that we are at such an apocalyptic moment that perhaps even planning for the future and working for the future and investing in your community and each other doesn't make sense because the uncertainty of the future. And when you talk to young people today, that's one of the things they bring up. They feel that planning for the future may not be necessary because they should, they just don't feel confident. A lot of that doubt and concern is sown on social media. It's what they see, it's what they're fed, it's what's amplified. And at the same time, anyone who knows me will know that I'm an optimist and that I am looking for solutions, and I am always looking for nonpartisan solutions or bipartisan solutions. As someone who comes out of the Republican Party in Massachusetts, you could only ever have a bipartisan solution. We were some tiny little speck of the political spectrum in that state, and yet somehow again and again, we were able to find ways to move forward, whether it was on healthcare or whether it was on any number of different challenges that we were facing together. And so I have a great deal of confidence in this kind of bipartisan effort. And in fact, I actually think this kind of bipartisan effort is the only kind of effort that can actually make social change, which is broader in scope. So I was very happy to join hands with Congressman Gephardt and all of you, this incredible group of experts who have been assembled across all of these different fields. I am humbled genuinely to be able to listen to you and learn from you today. And I'm just looking forward to that opportunity to work with you and to actually find some solutions that are focused on transparency. I do believe that we can use this incredibly powerful platform that has been developed for good. and to benefit our country and to bring us together and to build all those positive social outcomes that Dick was mentioning, and that we do not need to be going down this path. So with that, I would like to ask Nick Penniman to join us. He's the head of Issue One. He's the co-founder and CEO. And he's been on the front lines of the fight to protect our democracy for more than 2 decades. It's been an honor to know you, and I'm very glad to finally be able to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's great to see you all here. I'm going to truncate my remarks because we have a special guest, and I think we also have to kind of get on with intros around the room and then the program. So basically 2 things. Number one, as Freedom House has documented, democracy is declining around the world. We're in our 14th year of a democracy recession globally right now. Social media is one of the main drivers of it. Dick mentioned the Arab Spring, but I think that the forces of autocracy have figured out how to better manipulate social media than the forces of democracy at this point. It's now been weaponized on behalf of the autocrats and not on behalf of the small d Democrats. So that's number one. Number two, we can't imagine working on democracy and not working on this. We worked on money in politics, gerrymandering, congressional reform, election protection at Issue One. We've done so in a thoroughly bipartisan way ever since we were founded. But we cannot imagine what it would mean to be a democracy advocacy group and not work on this issue moving forward. It obviously is a main driver of democracy dysfunction. We have a great track record working in this way. We've got something called the National Council on Election Integrity, which has 36 members. Half of them are Republicans, half are Democrats. It's 6 former cabinet secretaries, generals, fascinating group of people. We've got something called the Reformers Caucus, which is 200 former members of Congress, roughly half Republican, half Democrat. So this is kind of our special sauce at Issue One, is bringing really interesting groups of people together across the political spectrum to push for solutions. So that's why we're so happy to see you all here today. And with that, let me kick it over to our first special guest, Cheri Bustos, Congresswoman from Illinois. I think that we just found out that both of our dads worked at the same newspaper together in Springfield. She is obsessed with this topic, as is Dick Gebhardt and Carrie Healy. And we just wanted to say a couple words about why she's here. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick, and Dick and Carrie, thank you. Here's what brings me here today. I'm currently a member of Congress. I represent a 7,000 square mile district in the northwest corner of the state of Illinois. And Donald Trump won my district that I represent in 2016 and then again in 2020, and I'm a Democrat. There's only 3 of us left in all of Congress. That's it, who won in 16 and in 20, where Donald Trump also won. So these are the politics. Carrie being a Republican in Massachusetts, well, me being a Democrat in a Donald Trump district. These are the kind of politics that you really have to figure out how you're going to navigate. And so last cycle, election cycle, I ran the political arm of House Democrats. And we had to set up a disinformation unit because of the fast and furious nature of all of the social media posts that were just flat out lies and were causing division in the electoral process. So we had to hire a team. We had to set that up from scratch. That is something that will probably have to be part of political operations from here on out. So that's number one, dealt with that firsthand. Number two, on January 6th, I was on the House floor. And to the point that Dick made of what culminated on that day. I wish we could say it culminated on that day, but it is continuing. And to be there on the floor that day, my husband's the sheriff of the county that we live in, Rock Island County, Illinois, and we were immediately texting back and forth with the family on our family text chain. And for them, that was the last straw. I've been in Congress for 10 years. We got together as a family over Easter after January 6th, and no one in my family, except for one daughter-in-law, wanted me to run again. My husband's response was, it is not going to get better. And so that's why I'm here today. Dick Gebhardt was kind enough to invite me to be here, and I am in search of solutions and want to be part of the solution as opposed to just complaining and setting up disinformation units to be reactive to everything that's happening. And so I am very honored to be here with you. Look forward to getting to know people And Nick, thank you for all you're doing at Issue 1 and helping to lead this as well. Thanks, everybody.